All right, hello everyone. My name is Aaron Walker with Ingevity's Pavement Technologies business, and today I'm here on behalf of the Asphalt Emulsion Manufacturers Association, or EMA, to share a little bit with you all about the past 100 years of bitumen emulsion usage in North America and some of the developments and milestones that have occurred in the North American market. This presentation was actually developed for our February 2023 EMA meeting, which celebrated the 50th anniversary of EMA as an association. So it's very timely that we're having this webinar celebrating the 100th year of the Hugh Allen McKay patent. And I'm very excited to be here to share a little bit of our experience with the international community. So I would just like to thank the International Bitumen Emulsion Federation on behalf of EMA for having us here to present. So in the beginning, at least in North America, early emulsions were really used for two primary purposes. The first was for asphalt cold mixtures, but even before this, it was really for abatement of dust abatement, alleviation of dust palliatives, however you want to name them. And this was really a result of the increase in motoring public through the advent of the motor vehicle, together with urbanization and a lot of effects that created a lot of high-speed moving traffic, such as shown here in the top left-hand side of the screen. And this was not only in farm-to-market roads, but also in cities and towns, outside of your major metropolitan areas, such as New York City, for example, which would have been covered with, hot mix asphalt or tarmac at the time. But it was a real problem, and it was considered a nuisance to the traveling public, and it was something that really needed to be looked into. And so this was the first real use of asphalt emulsions that we see in North America, was for this, what they called dust laying at the time. And we see numerous examples of it being used in the parks departments, together with on different roadways within the cities, etc. Then in the 1920s, or also at the same time, we see an explosion in the use of asphalt emulsions, and not only the use, but also the acceptance of asphalt emulsions, owing to several factors. Number one being the advent of the colloid mill. So it's important to realize that before this time, all emulsions that were produced using a paddle mixer. We did not have colloid mills. So the advent of the colloid mill, which, depending on how you define a colloid mill and its use in bituminous emulsions, this occurred sometime between 1915 and 1925. But obviously, this really propelled our industry in being able to produce uniform and consistent products for the various applications. So this acted as a tailwind for our industry. Also, the development of new standards. So on the right-hand side of the screen here, these are two snippets from early 1926 American Society of Testing of Materials, or ASTM, documents. And this shows the first ASTM D244 edition, which is the edition that's responsible for kind of spelling out the methods and standards by which bituminous emulsions would be tested against. So that was really important. Also, early advances in equipment. No longer did we have horse-drawn distributors sprinkling coal tar on the ground. Now we have motorized distributors, as shown in the bottom left there, applying bituminous emulsions, again, for dust laying, chip seal, etc. As well as early advancements in the United Kingdom and in Europe through the works of Hugh Allen McKay in 1923 with his patent 100 years ago, which we're celebrating today, which obviously had a knock-on effect here in North America. So a lot of good things happening in the 1920s, which really, again, propelled our industry forward. Also in 1929, the Association of Asphalt Paving Technologists, also known as AAPT, had an emulsion symposium at the time discussing the development of the industry, the development of emulsions and the science behind them, and demonstrating some early successes, again, with cold mixtures, chip sealing, and dust abatement type materials. In 1938, California begins experimenting with slurry seal emulsion brought over from Germany, which was called a Schlemme. And this is a picture here on the left of a truck-mounted slurry seal unit, an early one, of course. And then also McConaughey Technologies a company based in Indiana in the Midwest of the United States, becomes really instrumental in developing a network of licensees to really promote virgin cold mix technologies throughout the United States, using anionic, medium setting, and high flow type emulsions, which we're going to discuss on the next slide. So again, McConaughey Technologies in 1954. Kenneth McConaughey had developed and discovered and patented high flow emulsions in this U.S. patent called asphaltic paving composition. And just an interesting excerpt here from this patent. It says, I have discovered that by proper selection of an emulsifying agent used in preparing an asphalt emulsion, and by proper selection of the proportions, the high temperature hardness of the emulsion residue can be increased substantially without adversely affecting the properties of the residue at low temperatures. So what Mr. McConaughey was describing was that high float or gel-like material or characteristic that the asphalt emulsion imparts to the residual material, which does not allow the material to bleed. So it improves the high temperature properties without affecting the low temperature properties. And this became very prevalent technology throughout the 1950s, 60s, and even through present day, through not only cold mix technology, but also dense graded seal coats is used in Canada and the northern US. So that's like a chip seal type process, but using a pit run or crush run type gravel material with really high fines content. And then in the 70s, with the development of high flow rapid setting emulsions, allowing for the use of single size stone in a traditional chip seal type application. So this was a very large development in the North American market and is still very prevalent today. Then in the 1950s, also at this time, we have the development of cationic emulsions in Europe. And in 1957 through 1958, these emulsions were brought over to the United States and were first introduced in the US for seal coats. And another really interesting study from 1959 from the Association of Asphalt Paving Technologists, again, AAPT, we see that Mertens and Wright conducted some research that really showed that you do, in fact, get better adhesive properties of cationic emulsions for primarily negatively charged aggregate mineralogies. Although they said it's not a cure-all, meaning that anionic and cationic emulsions have their place, that cationic emulsions tended to outperform anionic emulsions with this respect to adhesion primarily. Then in the 1960s and through the 1980s, we have the development of microsurfacing emulsion, which was first used in Germany on a high-speed, high-volume Autobahn. And this technology, which was known as RallyMac, was brought over to the United States in the late 70s and early 80s. And in fact, Dr. Roschig from RallyMac was presented on this material at the ISSA, or the International Slurry Surfacing Association Convention in 1980, the same year in which the first microsurfacing project in the United States took place in Salina, Kansas by Blue Construction and Berg Camp. So that was a first here in the United States for us. And obviously, since this time, microsurfacing applications just increased substantially. All right, in the 1970s, we see the petroleum crisis, which had a lot of knock-on effects in our industry, but one of them in particular was the petroleum crisis, together with the development of cold planing technology, which led to the development of cold in-place recycling, which was very prevalent, specifically in the Midwest around Kansas and New Mexico through the work of Brown and Brown, and the Pacific Northwest through Valentine, which were two real pioneers in this industry for recycling asphalt, which became more and more prevalent and more important as bitumen emulsion and bitumen became more and more expensive. Also in 1973, as I had already mentioned, EMA as an association was founded 50 years ago, nearly to the day. And then another big one, in the late 70s, the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, had kind of created a mandate to get rid of VOC containing materials. So we wanted to transition to low or no volatile organic compound materials. So paint industry was very much impacted by this, as was our industry, where cutbacks really saw a nosedive in their volumes owing to this mandate, together with emulsions, actually between 1975 and 1985, seeing a 10 times increase in the volume of emulsions owing to this fact. So some really important stuff that happened in the 1970s that, again, really propelled our industry upwards, moving forward into present day. So also at this time, this is labeled as 1985 through 2005, but it really goes back to, again, the petroleum crisis. And really what we see in the literature is the petroleum crisis led to tack coats not always being used on new resurfacing projects, which led to early fatigue and failure of roadways. So, for example, a new hot mix overlay that would be placed in 1970, instead of lasting 20 years, would last maybe 7 or 8 years, and then it would have failure. And so in the late 70s and early 80s, we start seeing a lot of failure of these projects, and we started putting a renewed interest into tack coat materials, which was evident through the the development of new materials and practices such as the Nova chip process in the late 80s in Europe, which was subsequently adopted in 1992 in Alabama and Texas as the first test areas in the United States. And then in 1998, there was International Bitumen Emulsion Federation, IBEF, survey on tack coats, which kind of showed that their use was kind of sporadic. The specifications were kind of limited, and more studies went into the impact of such tack coats on the bond strength and the ultimate life of the pavement. And both researchers in Europe as well as in the United States had shown that the impact of bonding, or bonding loss, I should say, on pavement life was substantial. And so again, we see, not using tack coats to failures, leading to new developments leading to more research leading to new developments. And in 2005, we see the introduction of trackless tack coat in the United States. That was the first patent for that material. And as of a 2018 NCHRP report, which is the National Cooperative Highway Research Program that puts out reports sometimes on synthesis of various aspects that are going on in the industry. But as of 2018, trackless or reduced tracking tack coats were the second most specified tack coat material, again, as of 2018. And since that time, we've even seen an uptick in their usage since then, 5 years ago. So it's definitely a hot material that's being used and something that's very much on the uptick here in the United States. Some industry impacts that were really important from 2005 through present. Both at the National Center for Asphalt Technology at Auburn University, which is in Alabama in the south of the country, as well as in 2016 at Minnesota on Min Road, which is in the north of the country. We have test tracks where we placed different surface treatments in the pavement preservation world, if you will, to kind of see how they perform. And we've seen the early results of those show that they are actually very, very effective, as we would expect. And so it's really interesting to have this kind of north and south so you can see how the different pavement preservation treatments stack up in different environmental conditions. And then in 2018, we have the launch of roadresource.org, which was a joint project between EMA, the Asphalt Emulsion Manufacturers Association, ERA, the Asphalt Recycling and Reclaiming Association, and ISSA, the International Slurry Surfacing Association, that all came together to create this tool to educate end users on the value of pavement preservation, surface treatments, and recycling programs. So kind of looking to where we're at today and moving forward, we see an increase in pavement recycling and a move from hot to warm to cold, reducing the temperatures, getting more environmentally green practices, performance-based specifications. We're going to see these more and more as we move forward. The green and environmental push, as I already mentioned, this is here to stay. This is something we need to embrace. It's something for the greater good of the world, obviously. New product developments and innovations, and increased communication and education with our stakeholders, whether they be the workforce, agencies, industry, etc. And so this was a little bit of a synthesis of information from various subject matter experts, which we discussed with while creating this presentation. And so just a few acknowledgements that I would like to make before closing this out. This project was undertaken not only by myself, but also by Amy Blada of Ergon Asphalt and Emulsions, Nat Borsch of Russell Standard, Aaron Roy of Nurion, and Charity Cook of Paragon Technical Services. So I just wanted to thank them very much for their time in researching this on behalf of EMA, as well as our subject matter experts shown here and a few not pictured. But a lot of people gave their time to allow us to interview them on the facts that we had dug up through the literature to substantiate those claims and also to kind of fill in some of the gaps. So just wanted to thank our subject matter experts, which are shown here, many of which I'm sure are on this webinar. So thank you guys very much from all of us involved in this project. And with that, I would just like to thank the IBEF again for having myself on behalf of EMA here to present this. And at this time, I'd be happy to take any questions that you have. Thank you.